Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Attorney Anything. I am Rebecca'a Zung, and I'm so excited to have all of you here and joining me on this live presentation, which I do once or twice a week, sometimes twice, depending on the week. And this is my opportunity to connect with you personally and be here live answering your questions. And I answer questions from people from literally all over the world. So I'm sorry that narcissism is a pandemic, but I am really grateful that I've been able to create this community of people who are surviving and thriving and actually taking steps to get out of these relationships with narcissists or toxic personalities, and whether or not your person has been actually diagnosed as a narcissist, or they just have narcissistic tendencies or traits, or even just toxic tendencies or traits. It really doesn't matter, because your experience with them is the same. You're dealing with a person who is out to get you. And that's what happens, especially when you are in the discard phase and it's time to move on and you're trying to escape these relationships. That's when narcissists fly into their worst possible behavior. Whatever behavior they were exhibiting during your relationship, it gets on steroids when it comes time to get out of these relationships. So for those of you who have not subscribed to my channel yet, you should definitely do that now. You should subscribe and hit that notification bell, and that way you get notified when I upload new content, new videos, when I go live. And my team and I have so many more exciting new things planned for all of you. I am pretty much sure that I am the only attorney on the planet that has an expertise both in litigation and negotiation, and also an expertise in narcissism and how to actually create a situation where these people will want to negotiate and where you will actually be able to resolve your situation with that narcissist. Step-by-step guidance, actual real things that work, strategies that work. That's what I endeavor to bring to you through my Slay program, through my resources, through my YouTube channel, through my podcasts, my books, all the things that I do to make sure that there's tons of content out there for you guys. So I'd love to know where you are all tuning in from. I love seeing where you guys are. Every day I see people from literally all over the world tuning in to my YouTube channel and my webinars. If you haven't come to one of my free webinars yet, you should definitely do that. And we'll make sure that there's a link below for you to sign up to come to one of my free webinars on the 3 must-have secrets to communicating with the narcissist. So let me get to your questions. So Cynthia is asking, is there a way to have a parenting plan set up where you do not have to be in contact with the narcissist? My ex has no reason to be contacting me when our son is with me. He can call our son directly. So what you are asking about is what we in the business call a parallel parenting plan. And some of you others who are on this call today or are tuning into this live call today have maybe have heard of it. But basically what a parallel parenting plan is a parenting plan where the parents just do not ever have to interact with each other, or they minimally have to interact with each other. You create a situation where all of the exchanges are done either through school. I know it's a little bit of a crazy time with COVID right now, but wherever your children are during the day, you just figure out a way that when you're exchanging them, you don't interact with each other. And when if there's a change to the parenting plan, you put that in the parenting plan as well. So you might say, hey, we're going to exchange the children on Mondays or Fridays at school. And if there isn't school, then the exchange will take place here. Maybe it's a Target or something like that. And maybe it's, the Target parking lot, and the kids get out of the car and they jump in the other person's car, and you don't talk to each other and you don't interact with each other. And so the best parenting plans are the ones where there are, there's as much information and provisions in that parenting plan as possible. It's as specific as you can possibly make it, so that you leave very, very little to a gray area. So that means that if you want to change weekends or anything like that, how are you going to do that? If it's a true parallel parenting plan, that means you never change the parenting plan. You stick with it exactly as it's written, and there are never any changes to it, because then you don't have to interact with each other. But that's not necessarily realistic, because there's always going to be some things that come up, a family wedding, or somebody died and there's a funeral, or there's, your parents' 50th wedding anniversary or something like that you want to attend. And what are you going to do? So, in that particular instance, you might want to definitely consider having some sort of co-parenting app. There are a ton of them out there that are good, and co-parenting apps are great because you can give access to them, to your lawyers, to the parenting coordinator, to the judges, even if you want that, or if the judges want that. They may not necessarily want that, but so that's another way that you can kind of cut down on your interaction with each other. And another way is through a parenting coordinator. Parenting coordinator is basically like a mediator for parents. Parenting coordinator's job is not to come up with whatever the parenting plan is going to be. That's more of a role of the judge or a parenting or a custody evaluator. A parenting coordinator's role is really just to interpret the parenting plan and help the parents come up with resolutions for when there's a dispute about the parenting plan. Let's just say, for example, you switched weekends and now somebody gets 3 weekends in a row. What are you going to do about that? And so, mediating who's going to have that, mediating an issue like, who gets to travel with the kids if the kid ends up in travel baseball or, horseback riding or, something like that, where the kid is traveling for a lot of different reasons. And so who gets to travel with the kid, and, or, things like that. So, it's kind of hard, especially the younger the children are, the harder it is to sort of anticipate everything with regard to children. And it's almost impossible to think about, prom dresses or who's going to pay for certain things like car insurance when your kid is 2. But, it is better to have as much in a parenting plan as you possibly can. That cuts down on the disputes down the road. So that is your answer, Cynthia. Good question on how to set up a parenting plan where you have no contact with the narcissist. So let me see what other questions I have. And make sure to let me know where you guys are viewing me from today. I'm very curious. Let's see. Sorry, I'm still here. I'm just trying to read some of your questions. Let me see what I got here. Is it possible to get compensatory damages for emotional anguish as a result of my wife cheating? So this is a question from Peter. So first of all, I just need to say that I am not giving you legal advice by these with these AAA sessions, and I'm not licensed probably in most of the places where you guys are. So some of that is a little bit of a question for, it really kind of depends on the law in your particular state or country or area. But I will say, kind of in general, that you know, there's this whole myth around no fault versus fault never mattering. And I will say that no fault, if you live in a no fault state, that just means that you don't have to prove fault in order to get a divorce. It doesn't mean that fault never matters. But in general, even the judges are sort of, you know, you get the big eye roll if you say that your spouse cheated and that upset you. There's not a whole lot they can do with that. Unless the person spent money on the other spouse, then they can potentially recoup that as marital waste or dissipation, depending on the law in your particular area. The one thing I have seen is if you contracted a sexually transmitted disease from the other person, then potentially there might be some sort of civil claim that you can make, which would be for assault or battery, which is, you know, just an unwanted touching, an unwanted thing that happened to you. I've done that with situations where somebody has herpes or something like that. It's going to be an ongoing thing. And not only do they need ongoing medication for that for the rest of their lives, but there's also some psychological stuff that they're going to have to deal with. So I have seen civil compensatory damages for something like that. If you have a situation like that, only then have I seen people be able to sort of piggyback other civil claims, such as intentional infliction of emotional distress, at those kinds of torts claims. And that's what you're talking about with emotional damages. I wouldn't say that that's really a very strong situation. It's not probably a strong case, but potentially it's something that you could add on to other things, other claims that you might have as a means of gaining leverage. And especially if you want to expose the person for their cheating, you might want to add a civil claim like that and ask for a jury trial, because now they're being exposed and in front of the world with the bad things that they did. Does it mean that you would actually get damages for the emotional damage? Maybe not, probably not. And it really depends on the law in your particular jurisdiction. But it could potentially be used as a means of leverage to threaten that narcissist that they're going to be exposed as being a cheater. So that's my very long answer to your question, Peter, and hopefully it was helpful to you. Hi, Nero. Nero Zero from Scotland. Hi, Linda Marie from Louisiana. I see somebody here from Vancouver, Dapsalita. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hi, Nasaska from Greece. And you are my sunshine from Texas. Really awesome. Okay, so let me see if I can answer any more questions for people. Let's see. Just trying to see if there is, are there any other questions? I'm seeing a lot of comments. Let me see. What can be done legally about severe verbal abuse from the narcissist? That's a question from Heather. What I would say is try to figure out a way to couch it into something that matters to the court. So if you have children with that person, then you're going to want to get it in through, a best interests argument. If you are trying to get alimony from a person and it's caused you to not be able to work, then you get it in through that. So what I would say is, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of laws out there that protect people from verbal abuse, and narcissism is not illegal. I know that we all think that it should be, but remember that there's a big difference between divorce law and divorce justice, or just law and justice in general. So if you want, and what the judges care about that they care about the law. That's what they're tasked with. And so sometimes, the law doesn't seem fair, the law doesn't seem just. So if you want to get justice from the courts, then you need to put your claims in terms of the law and in terms of something that the judge is actually going to care about. So that's my answer on how to get any kind of compensatory damages for emotional or verbal abuse. So, okay, so for those of you who are asking about finding a divorce lawyer, come join me in my free webinar, which is the 3 must-have secrets to communicating with a narcissist. In that webinar, I talk about how I would go about finding a lawyer in your particular area. And we will make sure that there's a link to that below. If you like this video, give me a like. And if you found it interesting or helpful, make sure to share it. And if you haven't subscribed, now is a good time to subscribe. If you are negotiating with a narcissist, grab my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet. You can get that at winmynegotiation.com. And I'm so glad that you stopped by my channel today. If you haven't joined my free private Facebook group, by the way, come join me in that as well. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca'a Zung, and we'll make sure we drop links to all this stuff down below. So thank you so much for joining me today in this episode of Ask the Attorney Anything, and come join me again. I will be here again on Thursday doing the same thing. And so make sure you set your clocks for noon Pacific time. So I don't know what time that is where you are, but it's noon Pacific time. So thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who are dealing with narcissists, I send you light and strength, and I'm so glad that you're here, because here is where you're going to get the help that you need in getting out of these relationships. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.